Welcome, dear friend, to the Dark Screen Chronicles, your sanctuary from the noise and the light, your quiet harbor at the close of another day. Before we embark, if you find solace in this space, a simple like on the video is a quiet signal that helps others find this harbor too. And to ensure you never miss our future journeys into the dark, do consider subscribing. It is a silent promise that you will always have a place to return to. It's a comforting thought that while our story unfolds under one sky, our community is listening from all corners of the world at all hours of the night. If you feel so inclined, leave a quiet comment below, sharing where you're listening from and what time your journey into slumber begins. It's a lovely way for us to see our global caravan all resting together. Now, there is nothing else you need to do, nothing to solve, nothing to attend to. You have arrived. Here, in this space of pure sound and quiet darkness, your only task is to listen, to allow the story to unfold and carry you gently towards the shores of sleep. Tonight, our journey takes us far from the familiar world. We are leaving behind the paved roads, the gloating screens, and the ceaseless hum of modern life. We are venturing to a place that exists more in whispers and dreams than on any map. A place cradled in the heart of the world's greatest desert, a landscape of profound silence and breathtaking emptiness. We are borrowing to the great sand sea, to the vast sun-scorched expanse of the Sahara. But we are not traveling in the heat of the day. No. Our journey begins as the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery strokes of orange and purple before surrendering to the deep velvet black of the desert night. Breathe in and imagine the air beginning to cool around you. Breathe out and let go of the day. Feel the last of its warmth radiating from the cooling sands. Above us, a billion stars are beginning to ignite, a celestial dust storm of diamonds scattered across the infinite darkness. There is no moon tonight, just the gentle, ancient light of the stars to guide us. The wind, our constant companion on this journey, begins to stir. It is not a harsh wind, but a soft, sighing breath that has traveled for 1,000 miles over dunes and rock, carrying with it the scent of ancient dust, of distant forgotten oases, and perhaps a hint of magic. It whispers tales to those who know how to listen. And tonight, we will listen. We will listen for one tale in particular. The story of a city of ghosts and dreams, a city of white walls and untold riches, a city that has lured and eluded travelers for centuries. Tonight, we begin our search for the lost city of Zerzura. Our caravan moves in silence, a slow and steady procession through the velvet darkness. There are no camels or companions in the physical sense, for this is a journey of the mind. Yet you can almost feel the gentle, rhythmic sway, a slow rocking that lulls the body and quiets the soul. Imagine the soft crunch of sand underfoot, a sound that is immediately absorbed by the immense quiet of the desert. The silence here is unlike any other. It is not an absence of sound, but a presence. It is a vast, ancient entity that blankets the landscape, pressing gently on your ears, clearing away the clutter of your thoughts, making space for wonder. We are traveling through a region known as the Great Sand Sea, an ocean of dunes that stretches for hundreds of miles. During the day, this is a place of brutal, blinding light and shimmering heat, but at night, it transforms. It becomes a world of soft contours and deep shadows, a landscape sculpted by moonlight and starlight. The dunes, some rising hundreds of feet high, become sleeping giants, their crests outlined in the faint silvery glow from the Milky Way above. They are waves in a frozen ocean, and we are but a tiny vessel navigating their immense silent swell. It is in this profound emptiness, under the gaze of these eternal stars, that stories are born. For centuries, travelers have crossed these sands, their long journeys punctuated by nights spent huddled around a small fire, the only point of light and warmth in a sea of black. To fill the vast silence, they shared tales. Tales of jinn and ghouls, of hidden wells, of treacherous spirits that create mirages to lead travelers astray. And among these tales, one persisted, a story more hopeful, more alluring than any other. It was a whisper that passed from seasoned guide to young adventurer, from one generation to the next. The name itself is said to be a whisper carried on the wind, Zerzura. Say it softly to yourself, Zerzura. The sound itself seems to shimmer like heat haze on the horizon. It wasn't a place you could find on a map, not at first. It was a dream, a possibility, a legend that promised an end to the endless sand. The old traders would speak of it not as a certainty, but as a perhaps. Perhaps, they would say, if your heart is pure and your luck holds, you will stumble upon the Valley of the Little Birds, a place of impossible green in the middle of the desolation, a city with walls as white as sun-bleached bone. This is the seed of our story, a whisper that became a legend that became an obsession. And as we continue our slow journey through the night, we will follow that whisper deeper and deeper into the heart of the desert and the heart of the mystery. The whispers we follow are as formless as the wind itself, intangible, impossible to hold. But stories, like water, seek a vessel. And over time, these fleeting desert tales found their way from spoken word to the written page, solidifying from myth into something more tantalizing, a documented secret. Imagine now, a fragile manuscript, its pages the color of old ivory, brittle with the passage of centuries. This is the Kitab al-Kanuz, in the common tongue, the Book of Hidden Pearls. It was not a book for ordinary men, but a treasure map of words, a guide to the hidden wonders of the world, compiled by an unknown author in the 15th century. And within its delicate, hand-scribed pages, Zerzura was given its most vivid and enduring description. Let your mind drift to a quiet library in a bygone age. Picture a scholar hunched over this book, the only light from a flickering oil lamp. The air smells of dust and old paper. With a careful finger, he traces the elegant, flowing script. The text, he discovers, does not speak of Zerzura as a mere possibility. It speaks of it as a fact. It provides directions, albeit cryptic ones, woven into poetic verse. It describes a journey of many days, past a black mountain and into a hidden valley, a wadi that lies protected from the harsh desert winds. And in this valley, sheltered and unseen, lies the city. The Kitab al-Kanuz paints a picture of breathtaking beauty. Go to the wadi and find the city with its white walls, white towers, and white domes, the text reads. A city of dazzling white that shines under the sun like a beacon. It speaks of a great gate made not of wood or metal, but of a dark, polished stone that drinks the light. And there, carved into the lintel above this gate, is a figure of profound significance, a bird. Its wings are outstretched as if in welcome, or perhaps in warning. Its head is cocked as if listening for the footsteps of an approaching traveler. For centuries, this silent stone bird would be the most concrete image anyone had of the mysteries of Zerzura. The book goes on to describe what lies within those white walls. It speaks of an inexhaustible treasure, not just of gold and jewels, but of date palms heavy with fruit, of wells of sweet, cool water, and of a peace that settles deep within the soul. But it also echoes the older, darker whispers. It mentions the guardians. It speaks of them not as giants, but as protectors, powerful and silent, who ensure that only the worthy may pass the gate. The Kitab al-Kanuz transformed Zerzura. It was no longer just a traveler's fantasy. It was a destination, a puzzle waiting to be solved, a hidden pearl waiting to be found. Imagine holding such a book, the Kitab al-Kanuz. Imagine feeling the delicate paper, seeing the faded ink that promises a paradise hidden within the sands. It is a powerful lure, a siren song in written form. And so, as you would expect, men began to answer its call. They came not in great armies, but in small, determined groups. A handful of men, a few sturdy camels, and a belief that they were the ones destined to solve the riddle and claim the prize. They were the first true seekers, armed with the cryptic verses of the ancient text. But the book, for all its detail, was not a simple map. It was a poem, a riddle written by the desert itself. Its directions were not in leagues or landmarks, but in observations of the sun and stars. Travel towards the setting sun for 7 days until you find the mountain that weeps. What is a weeping mountain? A rock face with water trickling down its side? A peak perpetually shrouded in mist? Or something else entirely? The path was one of interpretation, of intuition, and the desert is a poor place for second guesses. Let your mind drift with these early seekers. Feel the immense hope that must have filled them as they set out from the last known oasis, leaving the familiar world of green and water behind them. For the first few days, this hope would have been their fuel. But the desert is a patient and powerful adversary. Imagine the sun rising each day not as a welcome friend, but as a merciless hammer in a brass sky. The heat would press down, relentless and suffocating. The horizon would shimmer and dance, playing tricks on the eye. A distant rock formation might momentarily take the shape of a tower. The glimmer of heat haze on a salt flat could easily be mistaken for the sheen of a white wall. The desert preys on the mind as much as the body. After days of unchanging landscape, of seeing nothing but an endless ocean of sand, the spirit begins to fray. The silence, at first a comfort, can become a crushing weight. The seeker might start to wonder about the guardians mentioned in the book. Was that sound just the wind, or was it a whispered warning? Was that shadow just a rock, or was it a giant waiting for the sun to set? Perhaps the guardians of Zerzura were not men at all. Perhaps the true guardian was the desert itself. The thirst, the heat, the maddening solitude, and the mirages, the false promises of water and shelter that would appear on the horizon only to dissolve into hot, empty air upon approach. For these early seekers, the price of the hidden pearl was often everything they had, and with every failed expedition, the legend of Zerzura did not fade. It grew stronger. Its inaccessibility only made it more divine, more legendary, and infinitely more desirable. The failures of those first seekers gave rise to a new layer of legend. It seemed that courage, determination, and even the cryptic words of the Kitab al-Kanuz were not enough. The desert, it seemed, would not yield its greatest secret to force or ambition. And so, a new idea began to form in the minds of those who still dreamed of Zerzura.
an idea that was even more mystical, more dreamlike than the city itself. What if Zerzura was not a fixed point on the earth? What if it was a city that moved? Let your mind hold this thought. A city untethered from geography. Imagine the great sandstorms that sweep across the Sahara, immense walls of dust and wind that can blot out the sun for days. They're powerful enough to reshape the very landscape, moving entire dunes, burying ancient landmarks and uncovering new ones. The legend began to say that Zerzura was a part of this dance, that it was a city that allowed itself to be buried by the sands, sleeping beneath a mountain of gold dust for a decade or a century, only to be revealed by another storm in a completely different location. It was a city that walked with the wind. This would explain why no expedition could ever find it. They were searching for a static place in a dynamic world. They were trying to map a dream. This concept also deepened the mystery of the Guardians. Perhaps they were not men or giants, but something else entirely. Perhaps they were the very spirits of the wind and the sand, the elemental forces that guided the city on its endless, secret journey. They were the keepers of the threshold. And the threshold was never in the same place twice. And within this wandering, ethereal city, the legends began to place a new, poignant mystery. It was not just a city of treasure and sweet water, it was the home of a sleeping king. Some versions of the tale say he was a wise and powerful ruler from a forgotten age. Others say he was not a man at all, but a benevolent jinn, a king of a magical race who chose to build his capital in the quiet heart of the world. But all the stories agree on one thing. He does not rule, he slumbers. He and his entire court are trapped in an enchanted sleep, waiting within the white walls of their wandering home. The treasure of Zerzura, the stories now whispered, was not its gold, but its secret. The secret of why the king slept and what it would take to wake him.
And so the legend shifts and deepens. It is no longer just a story of a hidden city, but of a frozen kingdom. The question that hangs in the desert air is no longer just where is Zerzura, but why? Why does the king sleep? What power could be so great as to silence an entire city, to halt it in the middle of a breath? The answer, as the storytellers tell it, is born of a tale as old as time itself. It is a tale of light and shadow, of peace and envy. Before its slumber, Zerzura was not just a city, it was a sanctuary. It was the desert's heart, a place of impossible and perfect harmony. The king who ruled there was said to be as wise as the stars and as gentle as the desert dawn. He governed not with edicts and armies, but with kindness and understanding. In his city there was no greed, for the wells were always full and the date palms were always heavy with fruit. There was no conflict, for every soul understood their place in the city's gentle rhythm. The sound that filled the white-walled streets was not the clash of commerce or the murmur of discontent, but the soft sound of laughter, the music of fountains in cool marble courtyards, and the scent of jasmine carried on the breeze. It was a perfect, delicate thing. And perfection, as we know, often attracts the gaze of jealousy. The legend speaks of a sorcerer, a man who lived in the bitter lands beyond the great desert, a place where water was scarce and hearts were hard. He heard the whispers of the perfect city and its wise king, and the story of its peace was like a poison to his envious soul. He could not stand that such a place of light existed in a world he knew to be so full of shadow,
And so, he resolved not to conquer Zerzura, not to plunder it, but simply to end it, to erase its beautiful song from the world. He did not come with fire and sword. His weapon was far more subtle. He crafted a curse, not of destruction, but a stillness. One evening, as twilight settled over the white towers, a strange wind blew through the city's gate, a wind that carried no sand, no chill, but a silent, invisible dust of pure enchantment. It was a spell woven into a lullaby of profound stillness. As this magical silence swept through the streets, the people of Zerzura simply stopped. The baker, with his hand outstretched towards the oven, the weaver at her loom, her shuttle frozen in midair. The children in the midst of a game, their laughter caught in their throats, the king and queen upon their thrones, their eyes gently closing, as if merely nodding off for a moment's rest. The entire city, in a single, silent instant, fell into a deep and dreamless sleep. It was not death. It was preservation, a perfect moment trapped in amber, waiting. And the sorcerer, his work done, vanished, believing his curse to be eternal. But in his arrogance, he overlooked one small detail, as all villains do. He failed to account for the single, tiny flaw in his perfect, silent spell, a single note of hope waiting to be sounded.
And so silence fell upon Zerzura, a silence more profound than even that of the great desert that surrounded it. It was the silence of held breath, of a clock stopped at midnight. The fountains were frozen, their water hanging in the air like glass sculptures. The leaves on the jasmine vines ceased their gentle rustling. The city became a perfect statue of itself, beautiful and lifeless, trapped in a single moment. The sorcerer's curse was absolute, or so he believed. But as the first night of the city's long slumber deepened, in the highest chamber of the tallest white tower, something stirred. It was a flicker of movement, a soft, weightless rustle. From a perch of carved ivory, a creature unfurled its wings. This was the flaw in the spell, the one soul the sorcerer's magic could not touch. This was the king's most cherished companion, the white bird of Zerzura. It was not a creature of ordinary feather and bone. Its plumage was the color of pure moonlight on desert salt, so brilliant it seemed to emit a soft internal glow. Its eyes were like tiny polished obsidian, holding the reflection of the stars. It was said the bird was a gift from the sky itself, a fallen star given life and form. And so the sorcerer's earthbound curse had no power over it. It was the one living thing in a city of sleepers. This was the very bird immortalized in stone above the city's main gate. That carving was not just decoration, it was a symbol of the city spirit, its hope and its freedom. Now the living embodiment of that spirit was all that remained. Imagine this solitary creature. Its loneliness must have been as vast as the desert itself. It flew from its perch, its silent wings carrying it out into the enchanted stillness. It swooped down through the silent courtyards, past the frozen figures of the king's court. It soared over the still marketplaces and the quiet homes. It saw the world it knew and loved, perfectly preserved, yet utterly gone. It was the city's last waking soul, its lonely guardian. And as it flew through the silent, sleeping city, it began to understand its purpose. It was not cursed to be trapped, but destined to be the key. The sorcerer's magic was a lock, a complex and powerful one. But every lock has a key, and the key was a song. For the white bird's song was as magical as its form. It was said its notes could coax flowers to bloom in the sand and bring water to dry wells. The curse had silenced the city, but it could not silence its spirit. The bird possessed the antidote. The challenge, however, was immense. The song was powerful, but it could not awaken the sleepers on its own. It needed a conduit. It needed a listener, a pure-hearted traveler from the outside world, drawn in by the melody, who could carry the song's magic into the heart of the city and break the spell. And so the white bird of Zerzura began its long vigil. It began to sing, not for the sleepers, but for the seekers, a song of hope cast out into the vast, empty desert, a lonely beacon in the night, waiting for the right person to finally hear its call.
And so the vigil begins. From its lonely perch in the city of stillness, the white bird sings. But this is no ordinary song. It is not a sound that can be measured or captured by a recording device. It is a melody woven from pure magic, from longing, and from hope. Imagine a sound that is part music, part light, and part feeling. A song that carries the memory of laughter from the city's vibrant past, the coolness of its marble fountains, and the scent of its jasmine blossoms. It is the essence of Zerzura, distilled into a single ethereal call. This magical song cannot simply be shouted into the desert. To do so would be to betray its subtle nature, to invite the wrong kind of attention. The greedy, the violent, the ambitious, they must not hear it. And so the white bird releases its song in whispers. It entrusts its melody to the desert wind, letting it ride the silent currents that flow over the endless dunes. The song becomes a part of the landscape itself. It hides in the soft sigh of sand slipping down the face of a dune. It echoes faintly in the vast silence between the stars. It shimmers in the heat haze that dances above the salt flats, creating phantoms of sound just as the sun creates phantoms of sight. For a traveler crossing the sands, the song would not be an obvious thing. It would be an experience at the very edge of perception, a faint high note heard for just a moment, easily dismissed as the wind whistling through a crack in a rock, or a feeling of being gently called, a strange pull towards a certain direction, and an inexplicable desire to crest the next dune. It is the kind of sound you think you might have imagined, a tune that you feel more than you hear. It's a ghost of a melody that weaves itself into the fabric of a traveler's dreams as they sleep under the stars, a subtle and persistent question mark in their subconscious mind. The song is, in itself, the first and most important guardian of Zerzura. It is a filter, a test of worthiness. It actively avoids the ears of those who are listening for the clink of gold or the promise of power. Their minds are too loud, their hearts too full of noise to perceive its delicate frequency. The song reveals itself only to the quiet soul, the wanderer who is not seeking treasure, but perhaps is seeking solace, the traveler who has learned to listen to the desert's deep silence. It waits for the one who comes with an open heart and a quiet mind. It is a call that waits patiently for the right listener, for the one person who can hear the hope hidden within the whisper and follow the ghost of a melody back to its source, back to the silent, sleeping city.
The centuries turn, the sands shift, empires rise and fall in the world beyond the great desert. The legend of Zerzura, with its wandering city and its sleeping king, becomes a fixture of folklore, a tale told to children, a story as mythic and distant as the stars themselves. But then, a new kind of seeker arrives in the desert. They come not with camels and ancient texts, but with internal combustion engines and the bold confidence of a new age. This is the dawn of the 20th century, and the European explorers have arrived. These men are a different breed. They are geographers, archaeologists, soldiers, and aristocrats.
drawn to the desert's vast emptiness for reasons of science, of national prestige, and of personal adventure. They are cartographers, driven by a desire to fill in the blank spaces on the world's maps. For them, a myth like Zerzura is not a gentle bedtime story. It is an intolerable mystery, an unsolved equation. It is a challenge to their modern, rational minds. The idea of a lost city, an unknown oasis hidden within the Libyan desert, the last truly unexplored part of the Sahara, is an irresistible lure. The whispers that were once carried by caravans are now published in the journals of the Royal Geographical Society. The Kitab al-Kunuds is no longer a secret manuscript, but a translated document, studied and debated in the halls of universities in London, Paris, and Berlin. The romance of the legend is now combined with the thrill of scientific discovery, and so the Great Zerzura hunting era begins. The quest is no longer for a magical key to awaken a king, but for a tangible, physical discovery that will bring fame and glory. Let your mind picture these men, dressed in khaki and leather, their faces weathered by sun and wind. They are pioneers of a new form of exploration. They learned to drive their fragile Ford Model Ts over terrain that was never meant for wheels. They mastered the art of navigating by the sun and stars, just as the ancient traders did, but they augmented with theodolites and compasses. They organize expeditions that are part military campaign, part scientific endeavor. They are brave, resourceful, and incredibly determined. They represent the peak of human ingenuity and endurance in this new mechanical age. And all of this power, all of this technology, all of this ambition is focused on finding that one single elusive place, the fabled white city of the little birds, Zerzura. The obsession has found its new champions, and they will stop at nothing to drag this ancient legend out of the realm of myth and into the harsh, documented light of day.
Among this new wave of European explorers, one name rises above the rest, a figure who would become so intertwined with the legend of Zerzura that their stories would become one. He was a Hungarian count, a desert explorer, a pilot, a scholar, and a daredevil. His name was Count Laszlo Almasi. He was a man who seemed to belong more to the desert than to the drawing rooms of European high society. He possessed a unique combination of old-world knowledge and modern-day grit that made him the perfect Zerzura hunter. Almasi was not just a thrill-seeker, he was a scholar. He studied the ancient texts, poring over the Kitab al-Kunuz and the accounts of earlier Arab historians. But he also understood the desert on a practical, visceral level. He learned from the Bedouin tribes, respecting their deep intuitive knowledge of the sands. He understood the wind, the patterns of the dunes, and the subtle signs that pointed to the presence of water. He could navigate for hundreds of miles with nothing but a compass and the stars. Yet he was also a pioneer in the use of aircraft to survey the vast, uncharted territory from above. He was the bridge between the ancient and the modern search. Let your mind travel with him now. Picture him flying a small, rickety biplane, the sound of its engine a lonely buzz in the immense silence. The cockpit is open to the elements, the wind whipping at his leather helmet and goggles. Below him, the desert unfolds like a crumpled yellow map. From this vantage point, he can see things no ground-based explorer ever could. He can trace the faint, ghostly lines of forgotten caravan routes. He can spot subtle changes in the color of the sand that might indicate underground moisture. He is searching for the Wadi, the hidden valley described in the ancient texts, a place that would be invisible from the ground, but might reveal itself from the sky. Almasi's obsession with Zerzura was profound. He saw it as the ultimate prize in desert exploration, the last great secret of the Sahara. For him, it was more than just a place. It was a symbol of the romantic, untamed spirit of the desert that he loved. He was not just looking for a city, he was chasing the ghost of a legend. He led numerous expeditions into the heart of the Libyan desert, pushing his cars and his men to their absolute limits. He endured sandstorms, mechanical failures, and the constant draining threat of running out of water. His story is one of relentless pursuit, of a man driven by a singular, all-consuming quest to find the unfindable, to prove that the whispers on the wind were real.
Count Almasi, for all his singular drive, was not a lone wolf in a complete vacuum. An obsession as grand and as captivating as Zerzura was too powerful to be contained by a single man. It drew others into its orbit, creating a small elite fraternity of adventurers bound together by the same impossible dream. They were a collection of British officers, scientists, and explorers, and together with Almasi, they formed an informal but legendary group that came to be known as the Zerzura Club. There was no clubhouse, no official membership roster. Their meeting places were the grand terrace of the Shepherd's Hotel in Cairo, or a dusty tent pitched deep in the desert, maps spread out on a folding table under the dim light of a lantern. Here, they would gather after months of solitary exploration to share their findings. They would piece together their information like a puzzle, tracing rumored routes, comparing notes on the location of wells, and arguing passionately about the meaning of a particular verse in the Kitab al-Kanuz. Imagine the atmosphere of these meetings, the air thick with the smell of canvas and pipe tobacco, the men, their faces burned dark by the sun, pointing with calloused fingers at vast, empty spaces on their maps. Among them was Rolf Bagnold, a brilliant British engineer and soldier who pioneered desert vehicle travel and would later found the Long-Range Desert Group. He was a man of science and method, a friendly rival to the more romantic and intuitive Almasi. Their conversations were a mix of scientific deduction and romantic speculation. One moment they would be debating the geological possibilities of a hidden valley. The next, they would be discussing the magical properties of the white bird's song. They were collaborators and competitors in equal measure. They shared knowledge, supplies, and camaraderie, for they knew that the desert was the true enemy, and to face it alone was madness. But each man, in his heart, dreamed of being the one to make the final discovery. Each one wanted to be the first to lay eyes on the white walls, to stand before the gate with the carved bird, and to solve the mystery that had endured for centuries. This unique blend of cooperation and rivalry only fueled their collective obsession, pushing them further and further into the unknown. The Zerzura Club was the concentrated will of an entire era of exploration, a small band of dreamers who pooled their knowledge and their courage for one last great push into the silent heart of the Sahara. Year after year, the expeditions pushed deeper into the blank spaces on the map. The Zerzura Club, with Count Almasi at its heart, chased down every lead, every rumor, every cryptic clue. They found ancient caravan tracks that led to nowhere. They discovered dried-up wells that had been lost for centuries. But the city of white walls remained a ghost, a shimmering mirage that danced just beyond their reach. Their search became focused on a vast, formidable plateau of dark rock that rose from the sand like a giant, forbidding island. This was the Gilf Kabir, a massive, uncharted wilderness larger than some European countries. It was here, they believed, that a valley could lie hidden, protected from the encroaching sands. It was during an expedition in 1933, with Count Almasi flying his small plane as the eyes of the group, that they made a discovery that would change everything. From the air, Almasi spotted it, a faint line of green against the dark rock and yellow sand. It was a wadi, a valley. But was it the valley? With great difficulty, the ground party navigated their vehicles to the location. When they finally entered the hidden canyon, they found no white walls, no silent king. But they did find life. There were acacia trees, sparse patches of grass, a sign that water, the lifeblood of the desert, was present, at least at some point. They named the valley Wadi Surah, the Painted Valley.
For within the shallow caves dotted along the valley walls, they found a treasure far more ancient than any sleeping king. The rock was covered in prehistoric paintings, thousands of them, pictures of giraffes, ostriches, and great herds of cattle, testament to a time when this desolate landscape was a thriving savanna. And then, in one small, sheltered cave, Almasi found the most astonishing image of all. He brushed away the dust from the rock face, and there, rendered in dark red ochre, were the tiny, elegant figures of human beings. And they were not walking or hunting, they were swimming. Arms outstretched, legs kicking, they moved through an unseen body of water with a grace and freedom that was utterly breathtaking. Let your mind rest on this image. Swimming figures, painted 10,000 years ago in the heart of what is now one of the driest places on Earth. The discovery of the Cave of Swimmers was a profound moment. It was not Zerzura, but in a way it was just as important. It was proof. It was concrete evidence that the desert had not always been this way. It had once been green and wet and alive. The legend of a lost oasis city, once dismissed by some as a mere fantasy, suddenly seemed plausible. It was no longer a myth, but a racial memory, a story passed down through countless generations, a lingering echo of a time when paradise cities were not a dream, but a reality. The quest with Zerzura was no longer just a hunt for a legend. It was a search for the last remnant of a lost green world. The discovery of the Cave of Swimmers sent a shockwave through the Zerzura Club. It was a moment of profound revelation. Standing in that silent cave, gazing at the swimming figures painted by artists 10,000 years before, was like looking through a window into a different world. It was tangible proof that the Sahara had once been a paradise. This single image did more to legitimize their quest than any ancient text. It transformed the legend of Zerzura from a fanciful myth into a plausible folk memory, a story handed down through the millennia, an echo of a time when water was abundant. Energized by this discovery, Almasi and his companions redoubled their efforts. Following the clues from the Wadi Sura, they finally achieved the breakthrough they had been seeking for so long. In 1932, a ground expedition led by a fellow explorer, and a year later, Almasi himself from the air confirmed the existence of not one, but 3 hidden valleys, each containing vegetation and signs of water. They had done it. They had found the Valley of the Little Birds. They named their discovery the Zerzura Club Oases in honor of their long and arduous quest. Let your mind drift to that moment of triumph. The rumble of the car engines finally falling silent. The explorers stepping out into the incredible stillness of a place that had not seen a human footprint for centuries, perhaps millennia. The sight of actual green trees, tough and resilient, clinging to life in the sheltered valley floor. The almost unimaginable relief of finding water. It may not have been the sweet, flowing wells of the legend, but it was there. They had found an oasis system that had been lost to the outside world. It was the greatest geographical discovery in the Sahara in a generation. By all rational measures, the quest was over. They had found the real-world basis for the legend. They had filled in the last blank space on the map. They had succeeded. And yet, a strange sense of incompleteness lingered in the air. This place was beautiful, a true miracle of survival. But it was not the city. There were no white walls, no towers, no silent sleeping king. There was no gate with a carved bird. They had found the body, but the soul of the legend remained elusive. They had tasted water, but the truly magical spring was still hidden. Almasi, the great seeker, had found a profound truth about the desert's past, but the romantic, glittering prize he had chased for so long was not there. The desert had rewarded their efforts and answered their questions, but it had kept its greatest secret. It had allowed them to find an echo of Zerzura, but not the city itself. The news of the discovery of the Zerzura Club oasis was a triumph of modern exploration. It was celebrated in the geographical societies of Europe. Maps were redrawn. Bognald and Almasi were lauded for their persistence and their pioneering methods. The rational world had its answer. The myth, they concluded, was born from a kernel of truth, a cluster of life-giving oases hidden in the Gilf Kabir, their existence distorted and embellished over centuries of telling and retelling. For most, the case was closed. The puzzle was solved. But let your mind settle not in the halls of science in London, but in the quiet heart of the desert, in the soul of the seeker himself. For Count Almasi, and for the others who had truly fallen under the spell of the Sahara, the discovery felt strangely hollow. It was a conclusion that answered the question, but missed the point entirely. To find a patch of trees and a seep of water was a victory for the geographer. But the dreamer, the romantic, the true chaser of the legend, remained unsatisfied. He had followed the whispers, and they had led him to a place that was real, yes, but it was not Zerzura. Imagine the quiet moments after the celebrations. Almasi, alone perhaps, looking out over the valley they had found. He could see the practical truth before him, a harsh, real-world oasis, a testament to survival against impossible odds. But it did not shine. There were no white walls gleaming in the sun, no silent sentinels stood guard, and most importantly, there was no enchanting music on the wind. The silence here was just silence. It was empty. The ghost of the melody, the song of the white bird that had haunted the dreams of so many travelers, was absent from this place. This was the great paradox. By finding the logical explanation for the legend, they had, in a way, made the true Zerzura even more lost. It was as if they had been given a perfectly logical, scientific explanation for a beautiful piece of music, an analysis of frequencies, wavelengths, and acoustics that explained everything about the sound, but captured none of its soul, none of the feeling that made it beautiful. Almasi had approached the desert with map and engine, with science and with reason, and the desert had given him a scientific and reasonable answer. But the city of dreams, the city of the sleeping king, cannot be found with such tools. It exists in a different dimension, on a different kind of map. The discovery did not kill the legend for the true believers. It purified it. It told them where Zerzura wasn't, and confirmed that its true nature was not of the earth, but of the spirit. The real city was still out there, waiting not for an explorer, but for a pilgrim.
And so, the age of romantic exploration reaches its quiet, unsatisfying end. The seekers have found a physical place, a logical answer, but the true city of dreams remains unfound, retreating deeper into the mists of legend. It seems as though the desert has decided that this generation of explorers, with their engines and their instruments, have learned all that they are permitted to learn. The city of the sleeping king would keep its secrets, waiting for a different kind of seeker. But before such a seeker could even emerge, the world itself began to change, and a different kind of storm began to gather on the horizon. This storm was not born of wind and sand. It was a storm of human conflict, of ideology and ambition. The late 1930s were drawing to a close, and the rumblings from the north, from Europe, were growing louder and louder until their echoes could be felt even in the vast, empty heart of the Sahara. The world was preparing for war, and the desert, that timeless landscape of solitude and spiritual questing, was about to be transformed into something it had never been before: a strategic chessboard, a battlefield. The men of the Zerzura Club, who had once been friendly rivals united by a shared romantic dream, were scattered by this coming storm. Their intimate, hard-won knowledge of the desert's secret places suddenly became a valuable military asset. The skills they had honed searching for a mythical oasis were now desperately needed for the grim business of war. Ralph Bagnold, the methodical British engineer, would use his expertise to found the legendary Long-Range Desert Group, a unit that could travel and fight deep behind enemy lines, using the desert as their weapon. Count Almasi, the Hungarian aristocrat, found himself on the other side of the shifting lines of conflict. His unparalleled knowledge of the desert's hidden routes used to guide spies and commandos across the Great Sand Sea. The very same landscapes where they had once chased the ghost of a melody were now scarred by the tracks of armored cars and littered with the debris of conflict. The search for a city of peace was abandoned. The whisper of the white bird's song, already so faint and ethereal, was completely drowned out by the roar of airplane engines on reconnaissance missions and the distant percussive thunder of artillery. The dream of Zerzura was forced into hibernation. The desert itself, like the city's sleeping king, had to endure the fevers of the world. It had to wait for the violence of men to pass before it could once again become a place where one could listen for the secrets of silence.
The great storm of war eventually passed, as all storms do. The engines of conflict fell silent. The armies departed, leaving behind their ghosts and their rusted metal shells to be slowly reclaimed by the sand. The immense quiet returned to the desert. It was a patient, ancient silence that had absorbed the shouts and explosions of men and returned to its natural state, as if the war had been nothing more than a brief, noisy interruption in an eternal meditation. The world began to heal and to rebuild, to look forward. And the legend of Zerzura, which had been buried by the grim realities of war, began to slowly, tentatively reemerge. But something had changed. The era of the gentleman explorer, of the romantic adventurer pushing into the last blank spaces on the map, was over. The world was now interconnected. Satellites would soon circle the globe, mapping every square inch of the planet's surface. There were no more truly unknown lands. If a city with white walls and gleaming towers existed in the Sahara, a spy plane or a satellite image would have found it. The idea of finding a physical, undiscovered city was no longer a romantic quest. It was an absurdity. And so, Zerzura retreated completely from the world of geography and returned to its rightful home, the realm of the heart, the landscape of the human soul. The story was no longer about a place one could find with a car or a plane. It became, once again, a purely spiritual quest. It became a metaphor, a symbol for that which is beautiful, unattainable, and perfect. It represents a deep and universal human longing for a sanctuary, a place of perfect peace and harmony, a refuge from the noise and the struggles of the everyday world. Think of it now, not as a city of stone, but as an idea. The white walls are no longer masonry, but the boundaries of a quiet and protected inner space. The sweet wells are not sources of physical water, but a deep wellspring of inner peace and creativity. The sleeping king is not a literal monarch, but the dormant potential that lies within each of us, the wise and serene part of our own soul that is often put to sleep by the anxieties and distractions of modern life. The curse is not from some external sorcerer, but from our own internal noise, our envy, our ambition, our inability to simply be still. The quest for Zerzura, in this new age, is the quest to find that silent, peaceful center within ourselves. It is a journey that requires no maps, no vehicles, no compasses. It requires only the courage to turn inward. So, how does one begin this new pilgrimage, this modern quest for an inner Zerzura? There are no deserts to cross in the physical sense. The great sand seas of our time are internal. They are the vast, often overwhelming landscapes of our own minds, filled with the ceaseless flow of thoughts, worries, plans, and memories.
The scorching sun is the glare of our screens, the constant pressure of notifications, the urgent demands of a world that never sleeps. Our thirst is not for water, but for a moment of genuine peace, a moment of true silence. The first step of this inward journey is often the most difficult, for it requires a deliberate act of courage. It is the decision to leave the last oasis, the oasis of distraction, the oasis of noise and busyness which feels safe and familiar even when it exhausts us. It is the conscious choice to turn away from the screen, to put down the phone, to let go of the to-do list that scrolls endlessly in your mind. It is the choice to step out of the frantic caravan of your daily life and venture alone into the quiet emptiness of your own being. Here, in this quiet darkness, you have already taken that first step. You have chosen stillness. Now, the journey truly begins. There is no destination you must rush to. The only goal is to walk slowly, to simply be present on the path. Let each breath be a footstep in the sand, a slow, steady rhythm. Breathing in, you take a step. Breathing out, you take another. This is the new navigation. You are not guided by the stars in the sky, but by the rising and falling of your own chest. At first, this inner desert may seem chaotic. Thoughts will rise up like sudden dunes blocking your path. Anxieties will shimmer on the horizon like cruel mirages, promising resolutions that dissolve as you approach them. This is normal. The mind is not accustomed to stillness. The key is not to fight these thoughts. You are not here to wage war on your own mind. You are here to find peace. So you do not fight the dunes. You walk around them. You do not chase the mirages. You acknowledge them and let them fade. You simply watch your thoughts as they come and go, like clouds passing in the sky, without judgment, without attachment. You let them drift by on the gentle wind of your breath. And it is in this practice, in this patient, gentle observation, that the landscape of your mind begins to change. The storms begin to quiet. The silence begins to deepen. And it is in this growing stillness that you might begin, just faintly, to perceive it. A feeling, the ghost of a melody, the first hint of the white bird's song. As we journey deeper into this inner landscape, walking with the rhythm of our breath, the noisy chatter of the surface mind begins to recede. We are moving beyond the borders of our daily anxieties and into a calmer, more ancient part of ourselves. This is where the true listening can begin. The song of the white bird, in this metaphorical journey, is not a sound that enters through the ears. It is the voice of your own intuition, the whisper of your soul. It is a feeling, a sense of rightness, of alignment, of profound peace. For most of our waking lives, this subtle inner voice is completely drowned out. It is buried under the noise of our own thoughts, the expectations of others, and the relentless demands of the world. We become deaf to our own inner wisdom. The practice of journeying into the inner desert is the practice of creating enough silence to finally be able to hear it again. It is the song that tells you what you truly need, not what you think you want. It is the melody of your own authentic self. Have you ever had a sudden quiet feeling that you should take a different route home? A gentle nudge to reach out to an old friend? Or a deep, unexplainable sense of peace that descends upon you in a quiet moment? That is it. That is the ghost of the melody. It is a communication from a deeper, wiser part of you. The part that is not caught up in the drama and the rush. The part that simply knows. The single, clear chime sounds here, very subtly, then fades. Did you hear that? Or did you feel it? It does not matter.
The song is not a command, it is an invitation. It does not shout, it beckons. In our story, the song is the key that guides the seeker to the city's gate. In our inner journey, this intuitive whisper is the key that guides us back to ourselves. It is the thread that leads us out of the labyrinth of our overthinking minds and towards the quiet courtyard of our own heart. By learning to recognize and trust this subtle inner guidance, we are learning to follow the white bird. We are letting our own deepest wisdom guide us home, to that place of perfect, peaceful sanctuary that lies sleeping within us, that inner Zerzura waiting patiently for our return. Following the faint, intuitive song of our own inner wisdom, we finally arrive. We stand before the gates of our own inner Zerzura. The gate is not made of dark stone, but of acceptance. The key is not a physical object, but the willingness to be still. As we pass through this gate, we enter a place of profound inner quiet. The frantic energy of the outer world cannot follow us here. This is our sanctuary. The white walls are a sense of self, strong and peaceful. The towers are our aspirations, clear and uncluttered. The still fountains and sleeping courtyards are the parts of our life that we have neglected in our hurry, now waiting peacefully for our attention. And there, at the very center of our inner city, is the sleeping king. This is the ultimate destination of our journey. This king is not another person. He is the wisest, calmest, most powerful version of ourselves. He is our sovereign self, our true nature. The part of us that is not reactive, not fearful, not driven by ego, but is grounded, centered, and whole. For most of us, for most of our lives, this inner king is asleep, dormant. He has been put under the spell of the sorcerer of modern life with its endless distractions, its culture of anxiety, its relentless pressure to be more, to do more, to have more. So how do we break the spell? How do we awaken the king? The legend tells us the white bird song needs a worthy traveler to carry its magic into the heart of the city. In our inner journey, this means we must consciously bring the wisdom of our intuition, the bird's song, into the core of our being. It is the act of not just hearing our inner voice, but of honoring it, of acting upon its gentle guidance. It is the conscious decision to choose peace over chaos, compassion over judgment, patience over hurry. Each time you choose to take a quiet breath instead of reacting in anger, you are bringing the song into the city. Each time you choose to rest when you are tired instead of pushing through to exhaustion, you are waking a part of the court. Each time you listen to that quiet, inner knowing and trust it, you are moving closer to the throne. The awakening is not a dramatic, instantaneous event. It is a gentle, gradual process. It is the slow return of feeling and life to a kingdom that has been still for too long. It is the slow, peaceful, and deliberate choice to reclaim your own inner throne and to rule your own life, not with force, but with the quiet wisdom of your own awakened heart.
And so, with each conscious act of peace, with each moment of quiet trust in our own intuition, a gentle magic begins to stir. The awakening is not a sudden jolt, but a soft, slow dawn. Imagine a single drop of water hanging suspended in a frozen fountain, suddenly trembling and falling with a soft splash. Then another, and another. The spell of stillness begins to dissolve. The gentle murmur of life returns to the white city. The leaves on the jasmine vines begin to rustle in a soft breeze. The weaver's shuttle completes its journey. The baker slides the bread into the oven. Life resumes, not with a frantic rush, but with a calm and graceful purpose. The sleeping king, your own sovereign self, opens his eyes. He is not startled. He looks around with an expression of profound peace, as if waking from a long and restful nap. His kingdom is restored. Your inner world is no longer a silent museum, but a thriving, peaceful sanctuary. To awaken the king is to come home to yourself. It is to live from that center of quiet strength and wisdom. It does not mean the world outside will cease to be noisy and demanding. The deserts beyond the city walls are still there. But now you have a place of refuge. You have walls of inner peace to protect you and wells of inner strength to sustain you. You can now walk through your days with the quiet confidence of a ruler who knows his kingdom is safe. The legend of Zerzura is no longer a story you are chasing. It is a reality you inhabit. You have found the city, not by crossing the Sahara, but by crossing the vast landscape of your own being. You have followed the whispers, you have heard the song, and you have awakened the king. The greatest treasure of Zerzura is not gold or jewels, but this deep and abiding peace, this unshakable sense of home within yourself. And now, our long journey for tonight is at its end. There is nothing left to seek, nothing left to do. You have found your sanctuary. Rest here, within the peaceful white walls of your own quiet mind. Let the gentle desert wind be the only sound. Let the darkness be a soft, warm blanket. The king is on his throne. All is well. The city is at peace. And you can now drift into the deepest, most restorative sleep. Sleep now. Sleep deeply. And dream of the quiet joy of a kingdom awakened.